Have you ever wondered, how do I actually take care of my pressure tank, and how do you make it last longer? Well, today I'm going to show you a super easy trick, and all you have to do is just make sure you keep the air pressure in the tank, and I'm going to show you, it's super easy, how to check it and how to refill it. So let's go ahead and figure out what tools do we need to get this done. The tools that we need are super straightforward and simple. All we need is a hose, preferably 100 foot or longer, just in case you have a little bit of trouble getting that hose out of your house. Having something of this length works great. Then all you need is a towel and one of these little fellas. The other device you're going to want is a handheld air compressor. I use this one, it's rigid, but the reason I prefer this is so that way you can have a little bit more control with what the pressure setting is on this display. Having control over the pressure setting is incredibly important, so that way you can make sure you don't overcharge the pressure tank. You can undercharge the pressure tank as well, so having a handheld one makes it so much easier. If you don't have one of those though, you can still use a normal compressor. You're just going to have to be a lot more cautious and pay a lot more attention to what's actually happening in that tank. If you don't want to get one of the rigid air compressors, you could always get one of the Ryobi ones from Home Depot. They're super cheap, super affordable, about 100, 150 bucks. One battery, one pump, more than enough, and it'll actually display how much pressure is in the tank. You could also use a bicycle pump or a car tire pump, as long as you have some way of seeing how much air you're putting into the system, that way you don't overdo it. All we have to do is take this here hose, get it hooked up to the tank, and then we can start the actual process of getting everything fixed up. So I'm going to take you with me. Let's go ahead inside, get this bad boy hooked up real quick. The first thing we're going to want to make sure we do is we get a nice, clear, open area to work with. So we're either going to hook up down here, or as you can see, there's another spigot right over here. But for today's example, we're going to go ahead and hook right up to this. After we find this, we're going to grab our little elbow, make it a little bit easier to actually connect the hose to it. I like to use these when I'm draining a tank. We'll put a towel underneath of it just in case we have a little bit of a drip. And then we grab our hose that's already ran outside, make sure we have our O-ring inside of it, and then we will go ahead and attach it to the tank. From there, what we are going to do is we're going to go ahead and turn the water off to the house, just like so. Every house is going to have a main water shutoff. Sometimes it'll be a ball valve just like this. Sometimes it'll be like the twisty ones called a gate valve. Sometimes it'll be made of metal. Sometimes you're going to get CPVC just like this one. From there, we have everything hooked up. The water is shut off. What we're going to do is we're going to open up our valve, which is going to start draining the water. The next step is we're going to go ahead and flip the power switch off. And what that's going to do is make it to where when the power to this, or when this pressure switch kicks on, the power from the house is not going to go to the well pump, meaning we're going to be able to actually drain the system without having to worry about it filling back up. The reason you want to do this is so that we can empty your bladder tank down so that we can refill it with more air. If we look up top, you're going to see that we have a Schrader valve. This is how you can get more air into the tank. So what you have to do is you have to hook a hose up just like we did now, drain it, put a compressor on that, and you can put more air into it. You may be wondering, how much air do I put into the system? You are going to look at the back of your pressure switch. There's going to be a sticker. And this one, it's a 40-60 switch. So what does that mean? You need to have 38 PSI of air inside of the tank at any given point in time. We've shut off the water. We open this up. We turn the power off. We see that the pressure is 0. All you have to do is figure out what your pressure setting is by looking at the back of the pressure switch. Take your compressor up here, hook up to this bad boy, and then you just fill it up to 38 PSI. As you can see, that was super easy to do. I think that every homeowner should do this at least once a year, kind of like when you're flushing your water heater. It may not hurt just to drain the tank, make sure the air pressure is right where it belongs. But have you ever thought, why does it matter in the first place? The reason is because no matter what you do over time, a little bit of air is going to leave the system. Just like with a car tire, you're going to lose a little bit of air. It's normal, right? The thing that we need to talk about though is, why is it a problem? When you have a pressure switch, that pump is going to engage at its particular PSI. So a 40-60 switch, 30-50 switch, whatever. In this example, we're going to discuss as if it's a 40-60. So the pump will engage at 40 PSI. And then from there, the pump will disengage at 60 psi. If you have a 40-60 switch, what that means is you should have 38 psi of air in the pressure tank when there's no water in the tank. So when the pump turns on, what will happen is that the pump will compress the air at the top of the tank with the water at the bottom of the tank until it gets to 60 psi. And it's going to constantly up and down throughout the entirety of its life. There are some systems that are different than that, but we're not going to talk about that. If you let the air pressure in your tank get too low, let's just say you let it get to 20 psi, the pump is still going to put enough water to get that air to 60. That just means that what's going to happen is that bladder is going to overextend in order to hit that 60 psi mark. On the inside of the tank, there's going to be a little dome, and this little dome is going to have a little hole in the middle of it. This little hole is basically where the air is going to be separated from the bottom portion. The problem with that little hole is if the air pressure drops too much, that bladder is going to start poking its way through. And then you start running the risk of that bladder potentially rupturing by rubbing against that little hole in the bladder tank. By emptying the tank down every now and again and making sure that you have enough air inside of it, you're keeping the nice equilibrium with the system so that you don't have to worry about it overexpanding and that bladder rupturing. If the bladder ruptures, it's game over. You can't fix it. The pump's going to keep short cycling, the pressure tank's going to be full of water, and you're going to notice some pressure disruptions in your house. When the bladder in your pressure tank ruptures, you have to replace the entire tank. It's kind of like if you have a leaking water heater. Once it starts leaking, you can't fix it. You just have to replace it. And as we all know, a water heater is expensive. A pressure tank is also expensive, even if you do it yourself. There are a variety of ways for you to install your own pressure tank as a homeowner, but most homeowners don't usually seem to want to go about doing it. I would recommend buy high quality pieces and parts. Don't buy the cheap stuff. You're going to end up replacing it all the time. I see it frequently where people think, oh, I saved $300, but now you're replacing it every 3 years instead of every 15. So think about the parts that you buy. With this super quick video, I thought it was important to give you usable information and usable practices that you as a homeowner could do in your own house to maintain your equipment. This is a very, very easy process. It'll take you all of maybe 15 minutes to do. It's super easy. Keep on top of it and it'll save you money. If you're not doing stuff like this in your home that's preventative, over time, you're going to run into some more problems. Preventative maintenance is incredibly important when it comes to dealing with your home's equipment, whether it's your furnace, water heater, pressure tank, whatever. If you're not taking care of it on the small stuff, it will shorten the life of your system. If you have a blown bladder in a pressure tank, what's going to happen? The pump's going to short cycle, and a short cycling pump does not give that pump adequate time to run and cool off. And so what'll happen is you just go off, and you're going to burn up the pump much faster. What burns up a pump is the on-off, not the continuous run. Yes, if you don't have enough flow going through there, you can cause damage to the pump, but in practice, it's the start, stop that ends up breaking most pumps. With a blown bladder tank, not only could you have an issue with the tank, but you could run into the problem of now you have to replace the tank and the well pump. I find that a lot of homeowners who are replacing well pumps learn that same day that their bladder tank is the reason the well pump failed. Every now and again, like if you're doing a water sample or if you're doing a real estate transaction, you might notice that the pressure tank's gone and catch it early. How often are people doing that? Probably not that often. Anywho, if you found this informative, if you found this interesting in any way, you know what to do. Hit that like button, hit subscribe. I have more videos posted every day on the world of wells, septic, home improvement, DIY projects, and just things you can do as a homeowner to help save yourself a little bit of money. Anyway, I will talk to you guys tomorrow and have a good rest of your day.